In a world where most people watch movies and then forget about them, 3 brave heroes join forces to watch them again and then talk about them. Join them in their epic journey as they go back in time, a decade and beyond, to revisit and break down films from a vast array of genres. Do these movies hold up over time? Are they classics? Find out on Retro Movie Roundtable. Starring your hosts, Bryan Frye, Chad Robinson, and Russell Guest. Coming now to headphones in your ears.
Hello, all you lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable. Welcome to the show where we watch movies and then talk about them. I'm your host, Russell Guest, and today joining me is a duo of other great co-hosts to join me. We have Chad Robinson here in Pittsburgh in the flesh with me. How are you doing, Chad?
I'm doing fantastic.
And Bryan in Spokane, Washington. Bryan Frye, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Russ. How are you?
I am great. So, do you remember a long time ago, I think it was the Bill and Ted episode, that we were saying that we were going to do Backdraft, Bryan?
Yeah, just like 2 months ago.
Well, we're going to make good on our word.
It got backburnered.
It did. But the happy part of this is there's no better time of the year to release this than now, because with September 11th, this is a great movie to honor the heroes who are emergency responders. While this movie's not about 9/11, it's a time of year where it's good to show appreciation for the firefighters and the emergency responders, paramedics, policemen. This episode is going to be dedicated to them, so thanks, guys.
Absolutely.
Let's go around and ask each other. Let's break the ice here a little bit. Today's movie has 2 brothers. They don't get along very well, but I want to ask you, what are your favorite movie siblings? Chad, why don't you take this one first?
Luke and Leia Skywalker.
Okay.
Solid.
Yeah, and any supportive reason?
They are in Star Wars.
Okay.
That's enough.
And Bryan, who are your favorite on-screen siblings?
Sibling cast of This Is Where I Leave You. It's Tina Fey, Jason Bateman, Adam Driver, and Corey Stoll. It's also freaking hilarious. And just that ensemble of 4 siblings was terrific on screen.
Okay, good. I'm not familiar with that one. I'll have to check that one out. Have you seen that one, Chad?
No, but it sounds promising.
I'll tell you guys, if you watch it, bring it up to your wives and be like, honey, I thought we'd do this tonight. And then they're going to be like, aw, that's really sweet. And then you're going to like it. So it's an awesome, use it if you're in trouble or really any time you want to be like, look at how sweet I am. We're going to watch this feel-good movie.
And for me, I probably would normally pick Luke and Leia in Star Wars as well. But I'm going to go ahead and, just for variety's sake, call attention to the movie Bridesmaids. We have a brother-sister combination who are roommates to Kristen Wiig's character. They're played by Matt Lucas and Rebel Wilson, and they are really funny, and they inject some nice side humor with some supportive characters in there, and they still crack me up to this day. I always think of, when you think about roommates, I always think about it as we got to be older and we thought, it was kind of silly, just a brother and sister living together with a roommate, and she's like, yeah, I understand. Thinking that they're going to kick the sisters out because she doesn't pay any rent or anything like that, and she goes, that's why we're going to ask you to. Great scene. And there's a couple of other good scenes in that movie, so Bridesmaids for me on that one. Who is your favorite kid actor? Footnote on this one, Chad, you're hard on young actors. Give us one that you do like.
Yeah, I'm infamous for not enjoying children in movies. They tend to not make anything better. See Iron Man 3. But I did really like Drew Barrymore as a child actress. She's cute, she's funny, she apparently improv'd a bunch of her stuff. So we did E.T. If you haven't downloaded that one, check it out. But I really enjoy Drew Barrymore.
Good one. I like her in Firestarter, too, as a young child.
Yeah.
Just don't make her mad. Bryan, favorite young actor?
I'm a big fan of Dakota Fanning. It probably started with Denzel Washington and Man on Fire. Of course, she's not a child actor anymore, so really enjoy her in what she's in now. But, you can go back. She was in Ally McBeal. She was in an episode of ER back in the day. Malcolm in the Middle. I don't know. She's just one that various things she did as a young actress. And, someone I've enjoyed watching ever since.
You know the filmography of Dakota Fanning far better than I do. So you heard it here first, though. Brian can't get enough of the Cat in the Hat. And for me, I'm going to go with Macaulay Culkin. He's about our age. He's a little bit older than us, I think. And I remember when Home Alone came out, this movie just took me by storm, as well as the rest of our generation. And I did go see Richie Rich and My Girl, and you know, he actually is a good young actor. I've seen his movies as I've grown up, and he's got some talent as a young actor. You don't see him in movies now so much, but that's okay. Credit where credit's due. His performances have held up to me. As previously mentioned, we're going to do Backdraft today. So Backdraft comes out in 1991. It grosses $77.8 million, and it grosses another $74.5 million in the foreign markets, and that's a total gross of $152.4 million. It places in the box office domestically 14th on the year, coming just behind Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, which I don't like and Brian probably does like.
Oh, I loved it.
Oh, I love it.
Okay. And Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country.
That was bad.
The number one movie of the year. Wait, isn't Star Trek 5 the one where people lament it? Brian, you're our Star Trek guy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's 4. Yeah, it's the Voyage Home. I think it's Star Trek 4.
Okay.
Was the one that most people are pretty poo-poo on. Oddly enough, I loved that one as a kid, just because there were whales and they go back in time and they see the original USS Enterprise. There are parts to it that young me really enjoyed.
So Free Willy was a big hit for you?
I actually did love Free Willy.
I did like Free Willy.
I liked oceanic movies. You're ready for a throwback there. Darwin the Dolphin.
So the number one movie that year, I'm pretty sure you both like, is Terminator 2 Judgment Day.
Yes.
Yep.
IMDb gives Backdraft a 6.7, in the middle of the road there, a little better. The critics of Rotten Tomatoes give this movie a 74%, and strikingly, even the audience gives it a 75%. The movie receives 3 Academy Award nominations for Best Sound Effects Editing, and Best Visual Effects. So Ron Howard will have to wait 10 years or so until A Beautiful Mind to have one of his movies win the Academy Award, at which point A Beautiful Mind will win 4 Academy Awards, including Best Director. So Ron Howard gets his later. Brian, why don't you take this one first? Have you seen Backdraft before? If so, when was the first time seeing it, and how long had it been?
I don't have a good timeline on this one either. This is kind of one of those movies that you catch at some point in your life. Thinking, oh, Kurt Russell. Songs where they start with like Escape from New York, and then they play Escape from LA, then Backdraft, and then Tombstone, and they just kind of go on a roll. But no, this is a good movie. This was actually probably the first firefighter movie that I ever saw, and then this led into me watching Ladder 49 and then getting completely hooked on the FX series Rescue Me. So this kind of started a genre for me.
Interesting. What's it like to return to now?
To see Baldwin.
Okay. So Chad, had you seen Backdraft before?
I had not. No. Unlike Frye, this was not a movie that I was even aware of. This was a whole new experience for me.
Had you seen any other firefighter movies before?
I have seen Ladder 49, so I pretty much went in with the expectation this will be Ladder 49.
How does it compare to that? Let's go that direction.
It doesn't really. They're different movies.
Different movies. Okay. For me, I've mentioned this one in previous podcasts, but this one's a little bit special to me. This was my first R-rated movie. And I saw this coming back from Universal Studios in California. I went to an exhibit there with my parents of Backdraft, which was an exhibit that you... First of all, I like it because you didn't have to stand in a massively long line. And then second of all, you stand at like a glass barricade, or I should say just a railing, and there's this room around you that just goes up in fire. It's a great pyrotechnics display. I'm not sure if it's still there or not. If it is, do check it out. This was probably back in 1995, 96 or somewhere around there. And so I came home. I wanted to see it. It was still on my mind because that was the thing that stuck out to me. It didn't disappoint. In fact, it exceeded my expectations, and I didn't know if this movie that went with the attraction was. And my mom had seen it before, and so this was my first R-rated movie. She couldn't necessarily remember anything wrong with it. So they double-checked it, and they handed it to me finally, and I got to see this was my first R-rated movie. Not necessarily the most memorable movie for most people, but for me, I'll always remember it for that. And so I was pretty excited to see an R-rated movie, and then I got done with it, and I kind of thought, I don't understand the big deal about an R-rated movie. I mean, you hear plenty of bad language around the world around you already, so that was not a shocker. It's not so violent that you couldn't conceptualize that either, and also it's got a little bit of steam in it, but it's not so over the top with that either that it blew my mind. So anyway, I was able to process this one thoroughly at age, let's say, 12. Over the years, maybe built it up in my mind, and then I came back to it in college, and I watched it there, and it disappointed me. And so I hadn't seen it since then, and now I'm returning to it. The pendulum swings back to the direction, and now it's somewhere in the middle. It's still got great action scenes, and I'm excited by it, but I'm also frustrated by the story. But we'll get into that.
Well, there's a sequel now.
Is there?
Yes, Backdraft 2 came out May of this year.
Oh, it already came out.
Yeah, Billy Baldwin came back.
Oh, well, it got
I bet that went well.
Yeah, it got the attention that Billy Baldwin would get then. So, as you can tell, I didn't know that. Quite the film guru I am today, then. But I should warn everybody, there are going to be spoilers that lie ahead, so prepare. If you don't want to know what happens in Backdraft, turn this episode off, go watch the movie, and come back and join us. We will return after this.
Christopher Walken here to tell you about my favorite podcast, the Retro Movie Roundtable. It's a fun listen if you like movies. I myself have been in movies like Deer Hunter, Dead Zone, and Catch Me If You Can. If you like this podcast like I do, go to iTunes, Stitcher, or Spotify. Wherever you get your podcasts, give them a 5-star review and comments on the show. I even gave them a like on Facebook and wrote to John and Russell at Retro Movie Roundtable at yahoo.com. One of the great joys of my career was hearing the Retro Movie Roundtable talk about my movies. Oh man, you're gonna love these guys. Wow.
Okay, and we're back. Chad, you're pretty good at giving a plot summary. Why don't you remind people what happens in Backdraft for those who haven't seen it since 1991 when it came out?
Sure thing. Brian McCaffrey, played by Billy Baldwin because his brother Alec didn't want the part, is a 20-something who is broke and drifting through life. He tragically witnessed the death of his firefighter father, who's confusingly played by the same guy that plays his brother in this movie, at a very young age. Broke, he decides to follow in the footsteps of his family and join the Chicago Fire Department. His brother Steven sabotages his easy assignment, gets Brian reassigned to his company. During this time, several suspicious explosions resembling one set by a pyromaniac are investigated by Don Shadow Rimgall. Steven pushes Brian too hard, and Brian quits the department to join Alderman Swayzak's fire investigation. Brian begins to suspect Steven is setting the fires, but they both come to realize it's their dad's old friend, John Axe Adcox. Axe is setting the blazes to get better funding for the department, which Alderman Swayzak has repeatedly cut. The brothers confront Axe during a large fire, which seems like a really bad time to have a fight. Steven and Axe fight in a scene eerily resembling Anakin and Obi-Wan's fight on Mustafar, and both tragically die. Axe from a fall, and Steven on his way to the hospital after being heroically saved by his brother. Brian and Shadow interrupt Swayzak's press conference with the evidence they have against him, and the movie ends with Brian helping a rookie with his turnout gear.
Well done, sir. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with the term backdraft, it is a dramatic event caused through a rapid reintroduction of oxygen to combustion into an oxygen-depleted environment in a fire. So, for example, breaking of a window or an opening of a door to an enclosed space. The backdraft present is a serious threat for firefighters.
They bring it up at least 3 times in this movie.
It bears repeating. So, in a way, that explosion of fire and the condition of that, in a way, is also emblematic of Dennis McCaffrey's character, who, he's got an explosive personality.
Oh, you mean Steven?
Names in this movie and the names of the actual actors are way too commonplace that it makes it very hard to discuss them.
It's particularly difficult because the dad and brother are played by Kurt Russell. It's like, oh, okay.
Well, that's not totally unheard of. He has a mustache at least, so it's not bombastic. No?
He has a mustache. It's fine.
Yeah.
I do wish they'd explain the term flashing. Maybe they did and I just missed it, but they brought that up numerous times in this movie.
It's where you wear a trench coat and then you go up to somebody and then you open it up and you're not wearing any clothes underneath and you go, "Hey ladies, look at that, woo!" And then you close your trench coat up and run away.
Yeah, they kept saying the building was going to flash, so I don't think that's how it was going to go.
Oh, okay.
They explained Backdraft and I was grateful for that, except they went a little heavy-handed. It's like, yeah, we get why the movie's titled that. You've really hammered this nail, but they kept saying the building's going to flash, and I figured that would be a relevant plot point, and it just never did.
Absolutely. Bryan, why don't you give us a rundown of some of those good old American generic names, those blue-collar Chicago firefighter names?
Kurt Russell, of course, is Stephen McCaffrey, but also his dad, Dennis McCaffrey, as Chad's brought up. We have William Baldwin as Bryan McCaffrey. We have Robert De Niro as Ronald Bartell. I mean, they just really broke the bank coming up. They were like, all right, switch those letters. Yeah, just drop the D. Okay, yeah, no, that's perfect. Rebecca De Mornay as Helen McCaffrey. Jason Gedrick as Tim. Marty Swayzak, and that's pretty much where everything tapers off.
Yes, and to refresh your memories on those names, De Niro's character is the detective Donald Remgale, so he's the one who's investigating all of this.
But that was the one named for an actual guy.
Is it?
Yes, he was an actual investigator, a fire investigator.
Huh. Did not know that.
I'll give a shout out to Jack McGee, who plays one of the firemen in the firehouse in this movie. The reason I'm giving a shout out to Jack McGee, he plays Schmidt, is because he's actually the captain of the firehouse in Rescue Me.
Did not know that either. So those are good connections there. I've got one here as well. It's an interesting twist of fate. Brad Pitt lost the role of Bryan McCaffrey in Backdraft to William Baldwin, who then had to be released from his contract because he was going to play in a small part in Thelma and Louise, and that cast was recast as Brad Pitt. So basically, it ended up being a swap.
This has to be the only time in history Brad Pitt will ever lose to Billy Baldwin.
For this and some of the background stuff, I didn't feel like anybody really wanted to play Baldwin's character.
Right?
Like the amount of shuffling and people who were considered and that sort of thing, it just seemed like everybody was kind of like, meh, I could leave it. And then in the end, really need some work.
Yeah. Alec Baldwin, Tom Cruise, Johnny Depp, Matt Dillon, Val Kilmer all turned it down, and Brad Pitt just lost out. Oh yeah, and Dennis Quaid. He was Steven.
Character.
Yeah.
So there were some people who wanted it and didn't get it. So Robert Downey Jr. and Keanu Reeves screen tested for the role, but they just didn't get the part.
I kind of want to see the Keanu Reeves movie.
Whoa, fire!
I'd love to see Val Kilmer just to have Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer in another movie together.
Yeah, Tom Cruise actually recommended, I think it was Kurt Russell for this.
Kurt Russell is a great cast for this one. I think we keep knocking William Baldwin, but I actually don't think he does a bad job in the part. Is that fair?
He was fine.
Yeah.
No, it's fine.
Yeah. And William Baldwin and Kurt Russell did their homework. They went to fighter fire boot camp. They learned the ropes. They even slept in Chicago firehouses for a month in order to prepare for the parts. That would have been cool, working at a fire station. Then Kurt Russell and William Baldwin come to hang out with you.
That'd be game.
Half of that would be cool.
Gosh, man, we got to stop knocking on it. William Baldwin's going to get upset when he listens to this, guys.
Who is excited about this, though? There's actually.
I would say that we are probably not the first people to jump on the William Baldwin's not a great actor bandwagon.
Well, there's a Daniel Baldwin that hosts a sports show up in Syracuse, and the only reason I know this is he has a feud with Dan Le Batard right now.
I mean, he's done a lot of movies, at least. So, I mean, they're not necessarily big movies, but, I mean, he's coming off of Flatliners the year before. So, the Baldwin brand mattered in this early 90s part here. And, yes, it is largely fueled by Alec. And then, you know, there's Steven as well and William. So, they all look alike.
Yeah, they sound alike, too.
They do. So, many extras...
2 seconds right now to go back in time to the 90s, and I'm going to tell you the number of movies he's been in that I really enjoyed.
Oh, okay, wow. Harsh stuff here for Stephen Baldwin. And
Billy.
Except that
we
I
didn't take down Stephen.
sorry. Harsh stuff for William Baldwin. My
Stephen,
mistake.
you're next in whatever movie you've been in.
I really liked Usual Suspects.
Yes, and don't forget the classic Biodome.
Oh.
Oh, Biodome was solid. Biodome was solid. You know, it's funny. I know Pauly Shore lost his mind, but he had a couple gems in there, kind of like Adam Sandler with the duo of. But Pauly Shore with Biodome and In the Army Now. Like, I will probably forever love both of those movies.
Well, Encino Man's probably his best.
Brendan Fraser makes that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take the other two over that one, but
okay.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Into what we're talking about right now.
Okay. And as Chad mentioned earlier, Dennis Quaid turned down the role of Bull McCaffrey, or that would be Stephen McCaffrey. So Kurt Russell definitely better than Dennis Quaid in my book. I don't know about you guys. I would not want to see Dennis Quaid taking the tough guy role.
I liked Field of Dreams.
I like it, but do you want to see him? Kurt Russell's like he's like a drill sergeant. He's tough on this. Like I'm having a hard time handing this one over to Dennis Quaid after seeing Kurt Russell do it.
I enjoyed Dennis Quaid as Sam Houston in The Alamo.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Remember
So
that.
he can do it. It's possible. Actually, you know, a lot of people, and I'm one of them, you know, really love Tombstone, Kurt Russell, Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer was a fantastic, do a bad job of playing Doc Holliday in Wyatt Earp with Kevin Costner. So, in my opinion, there can only be more movies like that, not less.
And as I mentioned earlier, we want to dedicate this episode to the hard work of the firefighters and emergency responders, police, paramedics. But Scott Glenn, the actor, gave the real firefighters credit. He said, they put their lives on the line for us every day. We as actors have it easy compared to those guys. I hope people appreciate them more after that we make this movie. And it does, for me. I mean, I wasn't one of those kids that grew up wanting to be a fireman and get on the fire engine. And so, to me, even though I saw this a little bit later at age 12, it was my first time when I sat down and started to think, this is extremely dangerous running into a burning building. It's not like Superman where like you can just go in, put out the fire with like blowing on it, and then like carrying out the crying baby and fly out the window unscathed. It's this movie does a lot to throw you into it. I'd say that's the backbone of why this movie is cool.
And they still get recruitment today. There are a lot of people that are showing up to be firemen, firewomen, and saying, hey, Backdraft inspired me when I was young. So it's cool that it does that.
It is. And tipping in the hat to some real firefighters, we're going to see some of the people who are in the movie and have some somewhat decent roles there are actual Chicago firefighters as well. So Cedric Young, who plays Grendel, Kevin Casey, Nightingale, and Richard Lexie, who plays Washington. They're all former Chicago firefighters themselves, and Jack McGee was a firefighter as well. William Baldwin said that his relationship with Kurt Russell on screen was better than it had been as his real brother.
Friends of each other. Like, do you think the Baldwin household just gets together and...
I don't know, but I know Alec Baldwin, despite some of his roles, like I want to like Jack, I think Donaghy from 30 Rock, but I think Alec Baldwin's notoriously not that nice of a dude. So,
What was it, Family Guy? Drink up, Steven, you're the weakest.
yeah. I'm with you, Brian. I'm guessing, I sense that these guys don't get along that well. I can't really even speak to William or Steven that much because I just don't know them that well. But I'm just going to bet that Alec Baldwin doesn't have an easy time getting along with anybody. That's my guess.
I mean, I bet. But he was in Dracula 2000.
Was it fourth Baldwin?
Yeah, there's Daniel Baldwin. He's the one that hosts the Syracuse radio show.
Wow.
Oh, I didn't know that was actually him.
Yeah.
I did not
Yeah,
know.
he brings on his brothers all the time, and his. I think there's at least one sister, but there might be two.
Yeah, I didn't know about him at all. So.
Yeah, he's the one picking a fight with Dan Le Batard.
Okay.
The only movie. No, that's not true. The two movies, and it wasn't Dracula 2000. It was Vampires.
Okay.
So this one also comes from the heart of a firefighter as well. The screenwriter Gregory Wyden was a firefighter for 3 years, and this film is based on the death of an actual friend from an actual Backdraft. So what do we think about the story written by former firefighter Gregory Wyden? Brian?
You have you're kind of confined. Like your antagonist is basically going to be one thing, and that's going to be the fire. I understand that Glenn's part in this being the one who's setting all this stuff up, but make a movie like this or a TV show redundant based on that overarching piece. Enjoyed about this is each fire is inherently the same, but very, very different. And I thought it really mixed up the danger with the camaraderie and that piece. And that's one thing that I've seen across the board in every fire-related anything I've watched.
Good points there. What do you think about story, Chad?
Yeah, I didn't know that part, that it was written for someone that he knew that had this tragic event happen to him. So that makes it far more personal, far more touching. I enjoyed it. Like Brian said, the fire really, they describe it as alive. I know some firefighters have come back and said, hey, it's not really a living thing. We don't think of it that way. But it was interesting hearing that perspective. And like Brian said, it was different. It was unique every single time you encountered it.
Yes, he is also the creator of the Highlander, as well as The Prophecy.
I love that movie.
Yeah, I think this one, I don't want to be too hard on him, and obviously he's a former fireman himself, but I think this plot isn't sure what it wants to be. We have a mystery here with a detective, and he's tracking down an arsonist, but then the central part of the story is the relationship between the brothers, and then also there's the arsonist himself. And I can't say that it all goes together that well. The arson plot line kind of comes into this relatively late in the movie. That's a challenge to then incorporate that. I feel like we don't get William Baldwin in the fold of the investigation nearly soon enough. It feels like it's an appendage of the second act because they focus so much on these brothers and their relationship. And I know that's the part of the movie that has the human dimension to it, but I think I would find it a lot more interesting to be with De Niro and Baldwin a little more in this. Is that a fair statement? I'm going to throw that to you, Brian.
One of my biggest gripes on a lot of movies is where they try to add that every movie needs, and I don't think that that's true. I think there are movies that you can have or 12, you don't need to have and touch on them. You can actually just have a really compelling movie about a group of dedicated firefighters who two of them have an issue with one another, and one of them quits, goes to work for basically an inspector of fire, and then go on. Like, you don't have to have the romance angle. You don't have to have the family skirmish angle. Across as every scene has to have some extra plot device that detracts from the overall point of this guy trying to fire department better.
So you're kind of coming at it from a different way of saying it, but I think maybe, is it fair to say, simplify this story and maybe just do less and simplify it, I should say, and focus on what's at the core?
Sure. No, totally agree with that.
Okay. I am saying that as well, and I agree. I think the issues of the ex-wife feel like an appendage. The failed romance between Baldwin's character and Jennifer Jason Leigh's character, I feel like it's a little bit forced in there as well, and it serves a purpose in the plot, but I feel like it gets too much time spent on it. Chad, we're both saying that this movie's maybe stretching in different directions. Is that a fair statement? Where do you stand on the story as how it functions?
Yeah, I don't want to give too much away on one of my superlatives, but I definitely get where you're going, and Brian's point as well. The romance seems contrived. One of the odd things to me was they did a montage of the sex scene with Jen, but it was spliced in with Steven fighting fires. And I'm like, this is very strange to me. And it kept cutting back and forth between them rolling around in bed and Steven's out there fighting the fire. I'm like, we don't need
But you need a
this.
montage.
It's like we just don't need this. I kind of felt like the Hallelujah chorus should have been playing during this. Kind of Watchmen-esque. Like, what is going on?
I was thinking we needed to cue Kings of Leon's "This Sex is on Fire."
That hadn't happened yet.
And shouldn't happen.
Time machine, make it happen.
Yeah.
Ron Howard, hook us up with that time machine.
Where was Billy Joel?
It's some sort of hot tub time machine.
That's true. We could have had. We didn't start the fire in there.
Things that are heavy-handed.
That's true.
Little on the nose.
Yeah, it just can't be playing when Axe is on screen.
Yeah. We started the fire.
Yeah, that was such a strange thing, too. He's like, oh, yeah, I'm trying to get money for our department. It's like, you killed 3 dudes. You can't do that.
To sum up what we just talked about, in the show Rescue Me, all of these plot points at some point in time, I think, are covered. But we're talking about a show that lasted, I want to say, 6 or 7 seasons.
So it had time to cook.
Use all of that, and you could totally tell that Backdraft, they pulled some stuff from that. Clearly, there was actors that were in the same things because they fit that role in people's heads. Movie, it's just, I don't like movies that cram.
Really, really good point. I think of Ron Howard as usually being a little more disciplined, but he's all over the place with his career. Admittedly, he does a very chaotic movie prior to this, and I think it pays huge dividends. I don't know if either one of you have seen Parenthood.
Yeah.
Yeah, starring Steve Martin. That movie has several different plot lines or different aspects of the family, and a lot's going on. And I somehow think that it works there. It's as if to say, family life's messy. And there's these different aspects of it, and it all comes together, and it tells all these various stories. And not necessarily an anthology, but they're not necessarily all contributing towards one similar plot line. And that's literally the movie he does before here. And I just think that whereas he had success, that movie was critically praised. I can see where this came after that. I can see where this is along that line of like, I can do all this stuff at one time. And Ron Howard maybe felt like he could do everything at once. Luckily, it's not that much longer before he goes on to do Apollo 13, and I think he gets back on the right track.
You can't really shoehorn romance or anything in.
That's just a good movie. I don't know. What do you think about, let's talk about Ron Howard as a director. Brian?
Say hardcore against Ron Howard. I think he's definitely one of the top 10 directors of our generation. Or so maybe our generation isn't the right thing, but the movies that he is known for, I feel like definitely came out in our generation.
He's done a lot of good ones. He's had a couple of missteps, but generally his missteps aren't that bad. Is that a fair statement? Like, he doesn't really bottom out too hard.
Sure. Outside of American, what I've seen.
Well, that's Lucas. So Ron Howard, some of my favorite hits of his include Night Shift, which is Michael Keaton's first movie, a really funny movie where they turn a morgue into a prostitution ring. Splash, the mermaid movie. Parenthood, as we mentioned. Apollo 13 is really good. Mel Gibson's Ransom, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, which the real one with Jim Carrey, which I like that movie quite a bit. Beautiful Mind is really, that's the best one for me on that one. Cinderella Man was really great. Da Vinci Code. Some people don't like Angels and Demons, the follow-up. I had a fine enough time with it. And I think Rush with Chris Hemsworth was underrated. And I quite liked, even though there was some controversy over it at the time, but I like Solo, a Star Wars story, quite a bit.
Just FYI.
He directed it, or he was in it?
He was in it.
I'm sorry. I was only talking about him as a director. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah, he was there.
No, you're right. You're right. I was on the director line only, and you're right. Ron Howard as an actor certainly was.
Oh, no worries.
American Graffiti. Sorry, we were having parallel conversations.
Yeah, but Seabiscuit as well. It's another one I really enjoyed that he directed.
Oh, thanks. Good one. Missed that. And Willow.
That I'm really looking forward to. It's called Hillbilly Elegy. It's based on a sociology book, Death of Coal Country. And the book is set in southern Ohio, but it really hits home. But the author does kind of a good whimsical, lighthearted analysis on how that's declining and what that looks like. And I thought it was a really important book to be written, and I'm glad that they're doing a film for it.
Yeah. So Ron Howard, in March of 2018, he announced at Universal that he had tapped Spanish director Gonzalo Lopez Galileo to direct the sequel with William Baldwin to reprieve his role. And it's a different kind of action movie, he said. It teaches you something real and it allows you to learn something. I don't know if you see Ron Howard in any interviews, but he seems like somebody who's just absolutely passionate about it in a way that somebody who's been doing it for this long that you don't always expect. I really enjoy hearing him talk about the field of movie direction. There's a sense of joy in him when he speaks, and I always like to hear Ron Howard interviewed.
Yeah, I mean, he's been in some of the most iconic TV shows with the Andy Griffith Show, Happy Days. It's fun to hear him talk about even the people that he's encountered and the cast he's worked with. So he's just had a fascinating career.
Yeah. And I think that early acting career helps groom him to be the director that he goes on to be.
Yeah.
Stop me if I'm completely off base on this, but if they ever made a movie about Ron Howard, how are they not going to get Joss Whedon to play Ron Howard?
I can't picture what Josh Whedon looks like.
Do a side by side sometime.
It's not redheaded for starters.
I just feel like that needs to happen, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I feel like this is mean to Ron Howard, but
I'm such a bigger fan of Joss Whedon. I think it's like a
no. I meant appearance wise, like Joss Whedon looks like he's fatter, and even though he's younger, like I don't know.
Well, I wasn't trying to piss off the Joss Whedon gods by calling him fat, but I mean, he could lose a little weight.
And I do like Joss Whedon as a director, so I'm just saying he's behind the camera for a reason.
I feel like we've frazzled Russell slightly.
Anyway, so Ron Howard actually goes on to say, though, and talking about this, and again, I mentioned his interviews that I like, he talks about and says, this is the most difficult movie that I've ever done up to that point. And I would imagine coordinating all of these pyrotechnic scenes would take a lot, because if you look at his filmography, he doesn't have a lot of effects, intense parts up to this point.
Yeah, Night Shift didn't require too much.
No.
Sorry, I had to find a picture just to prove that Sweden's not fat. Or that fat. Sorry. It's just on a terrible tangent. Terrible tangent.
Yeah, I gotta get back on the rails. To draw audiences into the intensity of a real-life fire, cameraman was outfitted in a fireproof suit and wandered through flames with a handheld camera. That's pretty cool.
I really hope he got paid more than the average rate.
I don't know how that works 100% because I'm assuming they're using film at this point in time. I wonder what measures, they didn't specifically go into this, but I'm wondering what measures they would have had to have taken for the camera, because film's obviously highly combustible.
So you're far more concerned with the film and the camera. I'm more concerned with the guy that's got to walk through it.
No, but I'm wondering how you turn the kind of cameras that you use in Hollywood are expensive devices, and so
yes,
how you take a regular camera, not designed to go into a fire, and basically make it into a protected box that's heat-proof enough to be able to do all that. Just from a product design standpoint, I'm actually genuinely a little bit curious about how they would have done that.
I mean, I'm guessing it's the same way they do like the Panasonic ThinkBooks for police officers, the ones that are made out of like metal. You know what I'm talking about? Like tough books and stuff like that. I mean,
Oh yeah, the tough
you can do
books.
anything if you're willing to pay for it.
Yeah, Christopher Nolan for the Batman movie here in Pittsburgh, they broke the IMAX camera, and he told us how many hundreds of thousands of dollars that was. And he's just like, there are 2 of these in the world, so give us a second.
So another thing that Ron Howard was mentioning, that he wanted to make the movie about power and conflict between brothers. He had actually dealt with similar themes in Splash as well as Parenthood prior to this. This movie at its core, I think, is at its best when it's the conflict between the 2 brothers. Well, obviously the action also, the firefighting, but the part of the story that does work well is the conflict between the brothers. All this other stuff didn't really come together for me as much, but at least it had that going for it, because that was continuous from beginning to end. Is that the storyline that you would most want to focus on, Brian?
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
I also want to give this movie credit. It's a pretty movie, particularly during the firefighting. They're highly coordinated to be able to... I really love the first scene where it's a failed mission for William Baldwin as he goes into the fire there, but it shows you the sense of being disoriented and what it would be like to just surrounded by all of this fire. I mean, you obviously can't feel the heat, but it is overwhelming. It's an intimidating thing to imagine being in this warehouse that's just shooting up in fire and how fast the flames can spread.
Yeah, and for movie reasons, there's obviously not smoke so the audience can see, but in real life, one of the criticisms of this movie is there's smoke everywhere. You can't see, you've got a lot of heavy equipment on, so the sounds, the heat, the smoke, just everything, it's sensory overload.
Oh, that's a good point, because there's not an abundance of black smoke. You're right.
Yeah.
Your vision would be more obscure than this.
Yeah, I found it interesting. Because fire doesn't crawl, but to do some of the effects they did to make it look like it was crawling, they actually shot it upside down. So those shots where the fire is kind of crawling on the floor is actually the ceiling. So they did a lot of technical work just to make these cool fire effects, and I appreciated that it wasn't some cheesy CGI fest. It really could have gone that way. I mean, 1991, you're not that heavy into it, but the fact that they were lighting things on fire, and they even said, hey, it's kind of tough to do 2 takes of this stuff. We've got to get it right. I really appreciated that.
Absolutely. And I want to also call out, I like the Chicago setting personally. Maybe it's just me being an architect. Maybe it's me having traveled there. I love the city of Chicago, so I love setting a movie in Chicago. And obviously with the history of the Great Fire in Chicago, I can't think of a single place I'd rather want to set this movie. Brian, do you like where they shot this?
Yeah, Chicago's a great place to do a firefighting movie just because of the style of the buildings they have there, the expanse of the city. It allows for, broad sweeping shots of Great Lakes, that sort of thing. I actually am a huge fan of Chicago as a location for just about anything.
Yeah, and the studio work, to be clear, like the fire work, is done largely in Los Angeles, but there are various locations around Chicago, I don't have to go into all of them, that this movie is shot, but the one that I really want to call attention to is the final scene where there's a huge parade of over 2,000 firefighters, and many of them were real firefighters, in central Chicago going down Michigan Avenue. It's a very sobering finish to this movie. It kind of took me by surprise. We lost Kurt Russell's character in the end. This movie shows you how... I normally don't like losing a main character like that in a movie, but in a way, it shows you how real and how dangerous this is. And because of this is an ode to firemen, in a way, it seems appropriate to me. And I actually like it and respect it more for doing, and that's a powerful scene. One thing I did want to notice, though, is I don't think that the 1971 part of the movie was 70s to the max. Obviously, we had a mustache put on Kurt Russell to be 70s, so he's got a 70s stash, but I don't know that the environment around him was very driven and focused on his face as a boy, but I felt like the cars and the buildings and stuff around there, I felt like that even though it's a small scene in the beginning, I didn't feel immersed in an earlier time period at that point.
They had people dressed as hippies giving peace signs, though, so that lets you know it was in the 70s.
That's fair.
That's all you really need.
Everyone was very nice. Like, I live right by a fire station, and so I see the fire engines quite a bit. No one's lining the streets just casually waving to the firefighters, like, yay! Kind of like the old times when people used to go down to the docks and wave at cruise ships that were leaving. I think John Mulaney does a sketch like, how bored were they that they're just like, we're going to wave a lot.
We're going to go down on Saturday, and we're going to wave our handkerchiefs to the boat. Do we know anybody on the boat? No!
Just like the 70s, all these hippies are taking time out from their peace sit-ins or whatever else to wave at fire trucks.
I feel like I've seen a number of, maybe more so policemen, who friendly, like, as they're on their patrol going around town or whatever, like, give a friendly wave. If, that happens.
You feel like people in this day and age are waving to the police?
If they wave to you, you're going to wave back.
Oh, these people were initiating it.
Oh, well, okay.
I'm going to cop to this, and I probably shouldn't, but when Jess and I were up in Vancouver, we were walking around downtown, and we ended up over where they dock cruise ships, and one was pulling out, and everybody's waving, and I waved back, so that happened. I'm just saying, like, it happened. Like, no, we didn't go down there just to do that, but every now and then there's some jackass on vacation who says, "Yeah, all right, I'll wave back at you." Well, yeah, I was trying to fit in with the Canadians.
Well, you were in Vancouver. Everybody's more polite in Vancouver. Everybody waves at everybody. Sorry I didn't wave. I really hope that you have a great day.
I know we were talking about the Chicago location, but even pre 9/11, I always associate my firefighters with New York. So for me, I kind of wish this movie were set in New York. I need that thick New York accent. Get someone like Steve Buscemi, who was actually a firefighter. He was a volunteer firefighter. That would have been fun. But just having those thick New Yorker accents and just their special slang, that would have improved things for me. You were even getting a more Chicago accent through this. I didn't feel like we had that heavy.
We did need a little bit of Chicago accent. Give me some Polish guy or whatever.
Yes.
There's a couple of names that sound very Chicago in there, but you're right.
I'm telling you, Chad, you need to watch Rescue Me. Like, that's 100% of what you get.
Yes.
One thing I'm curious about, and I'd love to ask a real firefighter, is it drove me nuts how often people took their masks off, and then also none of the helmets seem to have chin straps. These loose fire helmets just seem like they would just boop, pop off.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how else was his dad's helmet going to conveniently fall to him when he died?
I mean, construction caps, in fairness, have like a little crank on there to make them stay on your head. But again, firefighters, you're doing a lot of, there's hoses flying around, high-powered water, stuff flying. I'm going to guess you have a chin strap.
Well, Steven was driving me nuts because he was doing it without a mask or anything all the time. And the people behind him were wearing masks most of the time. And they do call it out later. I'd written it down like, why is he not doing this? Is it just because he's famous and he has a clause? Kurt Russell's face must be shown. But they said something like, oh, there goes Steven. He never wears his mask. I'm like, this is dumb. You're going to die.
I think there's ways of personalizing their equipment a little bit. I'm not saying go full-blown Black Hawk Down because everybody's covered in tan dust and goggles, and I can't tell who anybody is in Black Hawk Down. They write their names on their helmets on the front. That helps, but I feel like you could personalize things a little bit. It's one of those things.
So which way is it, though? I mean, it's either you can't tell who anybody is. I mean, these people are being paid for their, visages for this movie. So either they're not doing it by the book and they have to call it out or not call it out, or you can't tell who they are. So you can't have it both ways.
And that's my point, Brian. I guess at the end, I think as directors do time and time again, they tell Captain America to take his helmet off. They tell the firefighters in the movie to take their helmet off. They have the lead actor take his, army gas mask off, even though there's mustard gas all over the field or whatever. I think this is just one of those things that we have to suspend our disbelief well enough on, because I do think that it is disorienting a little bit. And obviously, the most emotion that you can convey as an actor is definitely going to come from your eyes and your face.
One of the last scenes with Axe, the expression that Glenn was able to convey in his eyes of just this conflict, the doubt, the sadness about what he'd done, I don't think would have been the same with the mask, but they did kind of personalize a few. Like he had Axe across his back and there was Bull across Steven's back. So you kind of had those markers. But yeah, I get it. It's hard to have the emotion in the eyes if they're just covered in a mask.
Right. And I think at the same time it would be nice to have a first-person mask shot so that it makes you feel like you're in the mask.
I tell you what, this just gave me an idea. Can I go a different direction with you? If you are going to be true to how it actually looks, you could save a ton of money on your actors by just going with some guys who aren't as good and just throw a mask on them.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are probably a lot of these are probably stuntmen doing this stuff because, again, as Chad mentioned, this is pyrotechnics at its finest, and they're suiting people up, walking cameras through a room full of fire. So it is controlled, though. They do know what they're doing, and they know where the fire is going to be to some degree. But fire can go wrong, as Michael Jackson will tell you.
Yeah. Well, they thought they lost Kurt Russell. He was supposed to emerge from the building, and then 4 minutes later, they couldn't find him. So one of the production staff actually ran in, no mask, didn't learn anything from what we were just talking about, ran into the fire looking for Kurt Russell, who'd gone out the back exit, and he didn't know. So this production staff member was like, yeah, that was really dumb. That could have cost me my life. So there was serious risk here.
Yeah, absolutely. To the point of like these LA studios that they were building, a lot of the material and it's pre-burned and they install it in such a way and they have layers that they can pull off or cut the shot of here's the fresh stuff and then you go cut back and then there's the pre-burned stuff. So it is really clever. Again, going back to that Universal Studios exhibit, when you really look at pyrotechnics, this movie probably has the best range of pyrotechnics in it. It might not be my top explosion of my movie watching career, but it is overall start to finish and the breadth of what all that they do with real effects. To me, I don't know about you guys. This is as good as pyrotechnics get
For the time.
Yeah, they also set fire to buildings that were scheduled to be demolished. There were buildings that it was just like, if this goes poorly,
No biggie.
Yeah, Brian, you say for the time is what has surpassed it for you? Because I'll be honest with you, even though this movie's 91, I'm not thinking of pyrotechnics specifically that surpassed it.
Put me on the spot for coming up with something, but I always really liked what they did in the Bad Boys movies. Thought they did a good job on those. Michael Bay gets a lot of crap for his explosions, but there's actually a lot of art and style into how he does it. It's almost become a thumbprint at this point. So I think, like anything, it gets better with time. There's only technological innovation. I'm sure that I don't have one like in a holster at my hip right now, but I'm sure there's a movie out there that's phenomenally better 20 years later.
I guess I'm going with Chad's point of if you did a lot of these scenes today, that would probably have a lot of CGI fire. I guess I just have such a high regard for practical effects.
I get that.
yeah.
Anyway, Kurt Russell, Kevin Casey, Scott Glenn, William Baldwin all did a lot of their own stunts, kind of following on what Chad had said there. And stunt coordinator Walter Scott was so impressed with their performances that he credited them as stunt performers in the credits as well. So I didn't sit there and notice that, but it's an interesting thing I read and pointed out.
Double pay.
Yeah, good point. The cast came face to face with 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit or 649 degrees Celsius fireballs on the set, so that's a hot set. One fire on the movie got so hot that it actually caused structural damage in the building that they were in. Luckily, it was an old warehouse and was already scheduled for demolition. Good thing that they picked a place that was going to be demolished.
Yeah, it always helps to burn down things that will be torn down anyways.
Let's really do it.
Yeah, we saw that in Demolition Man. They did some demolition.
Yeah.
I remember in that one they had a prize that you could blow up the building. MTV had you could be the person to detonate
Oh,
the building in the movie. So there was no prize here to start the fire. What do you think about the soundtrack, Brian?
I mean, I'm kind of with you on that time frame of music. So without like poo-pooing on it too much, not a fan.
Okay. And Chad?
I actually liked it. I liked that there weren't any real ham-fisted tunes that I caught on. I liked that when they're in the car, there's just some light-hearted tunes like War, What Is It Good For, playing on the radio. That was kind of fun. The sweeping music in the background, that actually goes on to be reused for Iron Chef in Japan, 1993. So they're using the score from this movie, the sweeping soundtrack, to Cook food.
Are we talking about the actual score or the soundtrack? Because Hans Zimmer, I'm a huge fan of Hans Zimmer. Like
Both.
his score for the movie was great. It's the individual songs that they use for various scenes that aren't the score that I'm talking about.
That's fair. I mean,
I'm with you.
The pop music isn't for everyone, but I enjoyed it as just kind of a throwback of, hey, this is what they would be listening to on the radio. This makes sense. I kind of appreciated that.
Yeah, I see both points. I felt from a mood standpoint, you do want to switch what's in action and the intense dramatic moments with what's on the radio and stuff like that. So I think in the end, I think you've changed my mind on that, Chad. I was definitely in Brian's camp of like, just stick with score was my note, like all score. But I think there's a tone difference by doing that, and I'm easing up on that now. If you've brought me around to that, I'm gonna eliminate that as a criticism now.
Apparently, these were the songs Russell was looking for. That was the worst, like, laugh, dead stop, like
I feel like I
awkward
missed a bunch of
silence
stuff.
after a laugh.
It's time for Look for This. Brian, what do you have for us?
In true form to my usual, my look for this is something I brought up in my casting. I love the fact that they have a member of the Rescue Me TV show who was actually in this. It's likely why he was cast for that show. I really can't emphasize enough how much I enjoyed that show, and I feel like I would almost retrospectively give this movie a better grade based on what it did for that show.
That's a great shout out. Chad, look for this.
2 of the 3 arson victims, Donald Cosgrove and Alan Seagrave, their names were significant. Cosgrove was Robert De Niro's technical advisor, and Seagrave is the name of a fire apparatus manufacturer.
Interesting.
Nice. Good catches there. I'm going to go with, there's a scene where John Adcox, who's played by Scott Glenn, breaks out the windows of a Mercedes-Benz that's blocking a fire hydrant in order to snake his hose through the car and access the fire hydrant, which I really like that scene.
That was cathartic.
Yes. This is actually a real-life instance from a Boston fire department, and was forced where they were forced to break the windows out of a BMW blocking a fire hydrant so that they could respond to a fire alarm across the street. So this can happen.
Don't park in front of a hydrant.
You don't do it.
And I love that they chose it was a BMW. I love that.
Well, I mean, it doesn't matter what the car is, I guess. I mean, they're not gonna go up and go, guys, this car's too nice. Let's just watch that. I don't know. I'm wondering if it's happened to less eventful cars that don't make these reports. Just like, hey, knock out the windows out of that Honda Civic.
Yeah,
nobody writes about that.
There's a ton of Toyota Corollas that are getting their windows knocked out. It's just too common of a car.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I think it's time for the best time. The awards. Chad, Brian, you ready to hand out some awards?
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
MVP. Brian.
My MVP for this is Kurt Russell. There are times in the movie where I feel like there's a hint of overact to it, but if you look at kind of the edge that his character walks in the movie, it makes sense. And it took me watching other fire-related shows or movies to understand like that mentality, because I think there are about 4 or 5 different personality traits that come out in firemen. They kind of comically, Woody Harrelson kind of comically does the different types of detectives in the first season of True Detective. I think there's probably similar types in firefighting. And Kurt Russell's just one of those people that, like, when you're that close to the edge and you're trying not to go over it, he did a good job of emphasizing that in his pseudo-insanity in this movie.
Great points.
He gets a point for convincingly uttering the line, well, I'm not your father. But he literally was.
I don't know why they did that. Like, seriously, like, if there's anything you can knock about this movie, like, why on earth would you pull a cameraman who's over the age of 50 and be like, yep, you're it. Like, they did not need to do that.
Get the director or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know why. Chad, MVP.
My MVP is going to go to The Fire. Without fire, there can't be any Backdraft. I love that a lot of it wasn't CGI. Jennifer Jason Leigh said it best. She said, I wish I was the fire. It has the best part in this movie.
Fire! Yes! Fire!
Yeah, it was great. It was unique, like Bryan pointed out. I really enjoyed it.
Fun. And I'm gonna double Bryan's pick here and go with Kurt Russell. In a movie with Robert De Niro, Kurt Russell still owns every part of this movie, and I would attribute his performance to being like a soldier. Ron Howard talked about how he wanted this to feel like combat against this force that is the fire. And I think Kurt Russell absolutely nails it. And he's intense, and he's a dysfunctional mess, and he's got his life priorities all out of whack, but in a way, that fierceness that makes him an animal makes him able to go out and fight fires at, like with such ferocity. So I like the character that he does, and he fits by far the best.
Yeah, to paraphrase what he said with that combat mentality, it was, this isn't selling log cabins. You screw up here, you're dead.
Yeah, absolutely. So best supporting actor, Bryan. Aren't you glad you get to go second, by the way? You always have to go last and everybody takes your stuff. That's why I gave it to you.
Oh, no, I'm down. My best supporting is Scott Glenn. He's a great bad guy. I think that, and I use bad almost in quotes with this, like, I think that you can have a character like Kurt Russell where he's dancing close to the edge and then show the guy who's gone over it. And he's just a really entertaining actor. I usually enjoy everything he's in.
Yeah, his speech to welcome the rookies was pretty great.
It was. It was almost going to be my best quote, but it's just too long.
I'm going to go with Donald. Oh, sorry. No, Chad, who is your
I know Russell's.
I'm glad you gave it to me because I'm going to steal that. I'm going to steal it. It's Donald Sutherland, who actually comes back for Backdraft 2.
Does he really?
But he plays Ronald, and Ronald's just a fascinating character. I love him because he kind of winds up being Hannibal Lecter. He's this villain who is advising the heroes how to catch whoever's setting these arsons. And his inflections, his facial tics, he just chews up every scene he's in.
I want to give this to De Niro, and I even kind of want to give this to Scott Glenn because they're both awesome, but I have to go Donald Sutherland. He's a show stealer when he gets on. His facial expressions in particular really add to the I'm a madman who just wants to burn everything. And
yeah, that very easy trial, like, are you going to do it again? No. And he almost sounds normal until De Niro starts questioning him, and he just starts giggling like, oh, I set old women on fire, I set children on fire, and he just starts laughing. It's like, oh, the crazy came out again.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
But that parole board, who's lobbing those softballs? Like, do you regret what you did? Yes. Are you going to do it again? No. They're just like, we recommend parole. Thank goodness Robert De Niro was there and took an interest in this guy.
Hidden gem, Chad.
I mentioned it earlier, but Donald Rimgall, not the character, but the actual person who was an arson investigator and who Robert De Niro's character is named after. He's actually one of the random party guys in the background, so
really?
Shout out to him for being an inspiration, likely being an advisor, and also getting in the movie.
I love how this movie pays homage to all the people who are, like putting real firefighters in this movie and doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's just cool. It's just a feel-good thing to do when a movie about this kind of hero. For me, I'm going to go with a hidden gem of Clint Howard, Rico, the morgue director.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He is just such a unique person. He gets work pretty much because his brother's Ron Howard, but Austin Powers, Night Shift, The Water Boy, Apollo 13, That Thing You Do, Rock and Roll High School. He's just a weird-looking dude. And yes, every time I do see him in that first scene of Austin Powers in particular. Like, he's back. The big boy? Well, sir, in many ways, the big boy's never left. He's been here offering quality food at an affordable price to families for... Not the big boy, you idiot!
That is a great scene, though, when he's trying to convince Billy to lift up the corpse. Jesus Christ, he's not going to sell you insurance. Lift him up.
Yes, he's so desensitized by the corpses that he's got this almost crazy personality where he's disconnected that everybody else would be uneasy with this. So I don't know.
I just like that line. He's not going to sell you insurance. Sorry to all of our insurance salesman listeners.
I guess so. Ned! Groundhog Day reference on that. Bryan, what about you, man? Hidden gem.
I think my hidden gem on this one's going to be the fact that David Crosby's actually in it as a 70s hippie.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Good call on that.
Just, look, even if you're not a fan of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young or even his solo stuff, the fact that he was just kind of a token dude in the mix was kind of fun.
That is cool.
I also believe if you were to cast a real-life version of the Lorax, he needs to play the Lorax.
That's solid.
Did any of their songs make it into this? Because we did Tremors and they shoehorned Reba McEntire. Was there a Crosby, Stills, Nash?
Not that I recall.
Yeah, I didn't either. That's a miss.
Time to recast. Who are you going to recast? Bryan.
All right. I had to do it just because it's been the point I've probably belabored the most. I want to see Alec Baldwin do William Baldwin's part.
They would be closer in age.
I got to tell you this too. I can tell you 100% that I had written that down before I knew Alec Baldwin was up for the part and passed on it. Like when you guys brought that up earlier, I was just like, oh crap.
Chad, who are you going to recast?
Yeah, it's really tempting to say Billy Baldwin because we know all these other people that turned down the role. But I think I have to go after Jennifer Jason Leigh.
Yes.
I kind of want more personality from Jen's character. So I think I'm going to go with Courtney Cox. She does Gale and Scream. I kind of want that almost meanness to the personality that she brings about in Gale.
Climbing the corporate ladder, or trying to get ahead in the system. I could see her doing that.
Or maybe an Alyssa Milano.
Yeah, that would be a good choice.
These are both good. I might like these better than mine now because I also don't like Jennifer Jason Leigh. There's something subdued about her performance and lifeless. And yes, in a movie with William Baldwin, he's not even for a minute who I want to recast in this. I want to go after Jennifer Jason Leigh as well. And I have Nancy Allen planned to go in there. But I do like your all's choices. This is an actress from the era who I'm fond of, and I think she should have gotten more work, and she's a good actress, and I would have liked to have seen her get in there. So,
can I throw a twist in here? If you had mentioned earlier liking to see what Keanu Reeves did with that part, what if they also had cast Lori Petty as Jennifer Jason Leigh's character? So then you'd have a rehash of the Point Break romance.
I also like that. So, but yeah, I do like that. I like Lori Petty there as well. Actually, see that feistiness that Lori Petty would bring to this would be good, which is similar to what Chad was saying with Courtney Cox. So, and if you're wondering, backtracking just a second, if you're wondering who Nancy Allen is, you would definitely know her from the RoboCop movies.
Yes.
That's going forward though. Best shot, Bryan.
My best shot is going to be that Kurt Russell carrying the boy out of the burning building as the explosion's happening behind him. That's kind of an iconic scene or picture for this movie. It was the front of most DVDs for it. I feel like that really sums up what they're going for, is the heroicism of firefighters. Because, you're clearly going to be sprinting with a boy in one arm and an axe in the other hand.
Excellent choice there. Yep. Chad, best shot.
So during the scene when Bryan really, I think for the first time, gets to see his brother as a hero, him and Steven enter a building and they're pretty much alone. There's this gorgeous shot looking up a staircase, everything's on fire, and you see the flames sucked in and the door slamming shut, and it's just this eerie, powerful, like, we're in over our heads scene for me, or shot.
That is a great one. I have a similar one. When behind Bryan, as he looks in on the fire in the warehouse room where his brother is hurt, this is where the fire moves across the ceiling and it comes at him, and the room's just ablaze, and you see this, how small you feel in this giant warehouse just going up in fire. That powerful moment to me is the shot, but I like yours as well.
Yeah.
Very forceful. Best scene, Bryan.
I think my favorite scene is really watching De Niro pick apart a fire crime. I really enjoyed his, you have to think like the fire, the whole piece where he goes through his thought process and his, trying to figure out how it went. Like, this is where it started. This is where it spread. It did this thing. I think that was like a really eerie thing, especially when you see the kind of dumbfounded look on Baldwin's face when he's like, oh crap, this guy's like, when he's talking about you gotta love it a little bit. Like that was a spooky scene, and I really enjoyed it.
I love that pick.
Yeah, very good.
Chad?
For me, it's the final scene with Axe. Everything's crumbling around them. Scott Glenn's face is it's really impressive because he doesn't get to say much, but what he conveys with his face, his emotions, it's just this conflict, and there's fire blazing all around him. It's just awesome. I mentioned earlier, it kind of made me laugh because I'm like, this reminds me of episode 3 in Mustafar with everything popping up and blowing up around them, but it was still just this powerful scene.
Yeah.
I have the high ground.
For me, the best scene in this is the elevator shaft sequence where Stephen Baldwin is trapped and, the water's filling up and there's fire all over the place. This climax of the movie, of this last fire scene to me, and his brother then dives across the elevator shaft to turn off the gas, which I'm pretty sure the arrangement of the utilities doesn't work at all like this, but it's dramatic and it sure is cool for the movie. So that was a great moment for me, and that scene where one brother is taking an enormous gamble to save his other brother, that's the movie summed up in a nutshell. Like, these guys are dysfunctional to the core, but they still protect each other, and I like that. Change one thing. Bryan.
I think I would have liked to have seen more Donald Sutherland. Like, maybe instead of doing an intro with the dad dying, who's also Kurt Russell, maybe have more De Niro's part in stopping Donald Sutherland as the intro, and then segued into, I'm not sure how to stylistically do this, but then segue into kind of firefighters doing their thing, and then center back on the family that you're going to be watching through the whole thing. But I felt like a little bit more intro to Donald Sutherland and really showing him out and being a fire starter. Maybe even toss in some music on that one, have a little fire starter playing in the background.
You thought you beat me to it. I was gonna say, thinking Prodigy. I am the fire starter.
I'm definitely up for more Donald Sutherland.
Is that yours as well then?
No, to the same extent, I guess you could work in Donald Sutherland into it, but Russell, I think it was you that touched on this earlier. I would have liked to have had more of this arson mystery investigation side, which brings in more of Robert De Niro, maybe more conversations with Donald Sutherland. But I really enjoyed that aspect of, this isn't just a disaster, but there's a little bit of a mystery, and then it was just all resolved way too quickly for me.
Nailed it. I mean, the bottom line of that is you have Robert De Niro. Use him.
Yeah.
And the fact that I didn't pick him for any of my superlatives, or really I couldn't even try and pick him for my superlatives, that's a problem.
No, well, I really want to speak to this because I agree with you. I mean, there definitely needed to be more of him in this. They went with that family aspect to it. Like, I don't mean like a family movie. I mean the McCaffrey family. I think that what the gem, like not hidden gem because it wasn't hidden, the gem of this movie is that you have De Niro playing such a compelling part. Like, even the scene where Baldwin's waiting in his outer office and he sees him changing his shirt and he's all scarred from fire, like, he did the other job. He did the Kurt Russell job. He was that guy. And now he's doing this other thing because his talents make that possible, and that's where he should be. So really, I think if there's any fault in this movie, it's that they underutilized one of the best assets they had.
Absolutely. And I'm with Chad. Just weave threads of the investigation in way earlier in the movie, and so that it feels like it's more integral to the plot. More De Niro, more mystery, and sure, you could probably get more Sutherland out of that too. So all of that. Best quote, Bryan.
I'm going to go with the Donald Sutherland quote here. It's him and De Niro talking. What about the world, Ronald? What would you like to do to the whole world? Burn it. burn it all. So creepy. It was so creepy, and I loved it. Like, Donald Sutherland, again, like, you want to talk about two of the best actors in this movie, were in that scene. Like, Donald Sutherland's just kind of giggling, talking about burning everything. Like, that was...
Yes.
You could have told me that if I knew nothing about Donald Sutherland, and you told me this is an actual pyromaniac that they brought in, they went to a place and said, this is a guy who actually sets things and people on fire, I would have believed you in a heartbeat. I would have been like, oh, wow, that's scary as hell.
Yeah. What'd you do to the little girl? Burned her.
Burned her.
It's just the inflection on it that is chilling, because
wild eyes.
Robert De Niro knows.
It's that but he does that knowing grin so well, because you can tell in his head he's imagining it.
He kind of looks like Nigel Thornberry in it. Just
That's good. That's a very fair comparison. Chad, best quote.
So Frye definitely took mine, and that's fine because it deserves all the recognition. That scene is just, it's great, and we need more. So I think I'm going to go the opposite direction and do the worst quote, because I have nothing else. So in dialogue with Jen, this was just stuck out to me. Bryan and Jen are talking, and Jen says, "That's a dumb thing to say," and Bryan goes, "You're right." And the scene ends. I'm like, well,
People talk that way.
Their lead writer was out that day, so yeah, we're gonna let the intern write this scene.
Okay, good point.
Can I go with a worst quote here? I'm not saying it's worse than that, but my worst quote for the movie. I hated Kurt Russell going, "Look at him, that's my brother, god damn it." It's just like, I get it. You're trying to prove that you're proud that your brother is doing what you do. But man, was there ever just hitting the nail? Like, just, you got it. It's in there. You don't need it. You're beating the hell out of it.
So my best quote's going to go to Lieutenant Stephen McCaffrey going, "You go, we go." Just like it.
Yeah.
That's the tone of the movie that shows you that everybody here is a team.
Well, it was repeated twice for emphasis.
Yeah. And so we've come to that time of the show. 5-star rating. Bryan, what do you give Backdraft?
I'm going to give this a 3. I'm not sure if we have done a movie that pulls me in two different directions more than this, where I'm like, oh, I love that. Oh, I hate that. So it is a 3 with love, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Chad?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. There are things that I love. I love the fire. I love the danger and the action scene. I really enjoyed Donald Sutherland, and I just wanted more of the arson and the mystery and the investigation with De Niro. I didn't enjoy the family conflict as much, and a lot of the things that we've talked about shoehorned in here with the random romances and the family conflict with Steven's family. Just all of that seemed extraneous. So, yeah, 3 stars.
So for me, I'm going to go 3 stars as well. We've got the mystery needs to start sooner, as we mentioned. I'm with Chad. There's parts of the family drama that just aren't doing it for me as much as the mystery and the political corruption that are going on that to me are just far more interesting. There's got to be a personal side of it and a human dimension, but I feel like Ron Howard, great director by the way, could have sifted through things and given more focus to this, especially like Bryan said, use your assets better. So all of these things seem more condemning than what I'm saying, because I do love the action scenes. I do love the fire. It is inspiring. It is a tip of the hat to the real heroes out there. So I'm with Frye. It's a good 3, if there is such a thing. Yeah. It's problematic, but it's also got a lot of redeeming qualities. So there's a better movie in here somewhere there.
Well, like the whole time we've talked about this, we've never really mentioned J.T. Walsh, who is the politician who's basically strangling the department. Like, what does that say? Like, when you have an entire movie based on one guy trying to stick it to this other guy, and outside of a couple little points to say, yeah, it was a firefighter doing all these things, we never actually talked about Swayzak and what he was doing. So I think that really feeds into all of our reviews on this, because when you can talk about a movie as much as we just did and not mention the scummy guy that's honestly the scummy guy in all the movies. Like, we literally never got around to it because how important was that piece?
Absolutely. Good points. But it's come time to pick a movie for next time. And you know what? Do you guys want to do me the honor on this one?
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, Brian, we're going to pick 3 movies, and we've got a fun theme for these movies, and it is games within movies. Are you ready for the choices?
Let's do this.
All right, first up, we have 1985's Clue. 6 guests are anonymously invited to a strange mansion for dinner, but after their host is killed, they must cooperate with the staff to identify the murderer as the bodies pile up.
I feel like it always has to be mustard. Like, if it's not always mustard, I'm disappointed. Everybody has their favorite.
Next up is 1982's Tron. A computer hacker is abducted into the digital world and forced to participate in gladiatorial games where his only chance of escape is with the help of a heroic security program.
And some of the best Depeche Mode ever.
Note this is the 1982 one, not the 2010, I think it was.
Tron Legacy? Yeah. You know, It was bad, but I heart. So.
Yeah, I dug it. And finally, we've got 1995's Jumanji. When 2 kids find and play a magical board game, they release a man trapped for decades in it, and a host of dangers that can only be stopped by finishing the game. Once again, I have to make a clarification. This does not have Kevin Hart or The Rock in it. This has Robin Williams.
Whoa. I'm going to go with... Yeah, this is tough. I'm a huge Tron fan. I got to tell you ahead of time, I'm a giant Tron fan. But I think I'm going to go with option A.
All right, we've been begging for more mystery throughout this podcast, so mystery is what we're going to get. Clue in 1985.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Chad. And thank you, all the lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable. Thank you for... We invite you to reach out to us. We want to hear from you. Subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts. Those iTunes ratings help other people find the show. It's the number one thing you can do to help us. So please, 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 if you haven't already, give the show a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. Give us a like on Facebook. We want to hear from you. If you like the movies that we're doing, let us know in the comments section. Email us at retromovieroundtable@yahoo.com if you want to be on the show, if you want to go into a deeper discussion. As always, thank you for listening. Be good to each other and watch more movies. Brian?
Rebellions were built on hope.